Hey everybody, Peter Harris here with 10 Questions with the Musical Mind. Got a cool guest this week. We welcome Whitesnake guitarist Joel Hoekstra to the program. Joel, of course, has a new album with Whitesnake coming out, Flesh and Blood. You've already heard a couple of the new singles, including Shut Up and Kiss Me and Trouble Is Your Middle Name. At least I hope you've heard them so far. So we talked with Joel about the songwriting process with the new Whitesnake album, and of course, how he approaches that with having a dual lead guitar setup. Of course, it is him and Red Beach in the band. We talk with him about the differences in writing, whether it be his solo projects like Joel Hoekstra's 13, or his collaborations. He's a touring guitarist with Cher. He's also a member of the hugely successful Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And in addition to the songwriting, we talk about what the differences are in playing live with those different setups. So I think you'll enjoy this interview, and it's certainly a good time. And if you get done with this, please by all means go out and check out the new Whitesnake music. So here we go with Joel Hoekstra. Hey Joel, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Likewise,
I want
brother.
to talk
Yeah.
about, you got big stuff going on. You've got Flesh and Blood coming out very soon. This will be your first of all original with Whitesnake. Of course, I'm sure the Purple album had a lot of actual writing and arranging to go with it. It wasn't like you were just slapping a bunch of covers together, but it was a pretty involved project. But it's got to be nice to have your really your stamp and some
Yeah,
of your parts.
there's a level higher. Definitely the Purple album was creativity in terms of what guitar parts I was going to play, and I had to invent guitar parts that weren't pre-existing on that stuff. Because obviously Purple was kind of it was more either Richie or Tommy Bolin with John Lord, and we
Right.
weren't going to go as heavy on the keyboards, so I had to kind of figure out whether or not double and rev. So there was more creativity there than people realized, but certainly Flesh and Blood is the next step. Actually, like co-writing with David and co-writing with Rev, and having some of my ideas actually on the album, and in the end, actually being brought in as co-producer and just for kind of big picture ideas and things of that nature. So yeah, it's definitely like a step further for me.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. Now, with the writing for that, what tends to come first? Like for Flesh and Blood, at least, does David come up with a lyrical idea or treatment, or is it usually you and Reb coming with a riff or chord progression? Or like, what's usually the genesis of a song idea there in that band?
Well, I came in with some riff ideas and Reb came in with some riff ideas, but really the way David seemed to prefer to get things going was he would have the basic idea of a song,
Okay.
and he writes everything on kind of a smaller scale nylon string guitar,
Okay.
oddly enough, all things. I mean, no one would picture that, but that's David's thing. He likes to sit at his desk and play on that, and he comes up with all the foundations for his songs that way. So he had a lot of things to get the ball rolling. That was the way that in general it worked. There were exceptions to the rule, but he would either then say to me, where would you go with this? Or he would say to Reb, where would you go with this? Or he would say to both of us, where would you go with this? Because there was a period where Reb and I were both there, and that was when we were really trying to demo all of the songs that were going to be on the album, and even some that didn't get on the album. So Rev and I would take that idea that we would hash out real quickly around the desk. David moves real quick.
Okay.
I mean, it's like, where would you go with this? Your first idea has to be like good. He likes things. He didn't like to overwrite. He likes things kind of the straighter, the 3-chord rock thing. Like
Right.
Reb said in an interview that I read, and I was like, well, that's an appropriate way to put it. David likes to keep things simple and kind of guttural, which is great. He
Yeah.
followed like that songwriting instinct of keeping it simple, and then Reb and I would go down into the actual studio, demo up the song, and present it to David and maybe make some edits from there or something like that. And then eventually, once everything was demoed with a drum machine, essentially, or drum samples, then we went ahead and tracked the songs properly with the band.
Okay. Well, that's staying true to his original, vision of the band, going back to, the origins of his, Whitesnake album and North Winds and all that. Very much a blues rock stripped down sound. So I guess he's still got that initial vision of mine. So that's neat. That's cool.
He does. I think. Well, David is always going to know what he wants and stylistically under the
Hmm.
Whitesnake umbrella, and it is a pretty wide umbrella. I mean, there's some very commercial stuff. David likes to say that Motown has an influence in Whitesnake, even in the songwriting, not just blues, but so there was a little bit of everything thrown around. And in the end, I think a little bit of everything made the record, especially if you get the bonus edition, because there's some, like Reb had a cool blues song, Can't Do Right for Doing Wrong, that got left off of the actual album itself. But that's like one that like the UK fans, the Bernie Marsden, Mickey Moody fans of Whitesnake would say, "Hey, I wish Coverdale would sing some blues. That they should check out that track." And
Okay.
I think the best way I can describe the album, Flesh and Blood, is a little bit of influence from every era of Whitesnake. We didn't really just go and say, "Hey, man, we're going to try and sound like this era." I think there's some stuff that's influenced by that early UK era of Whitesnake, and I think that's certainly the Geffen era, as David calls it.
Right.
The '87 stuff or Slip of the Tongue, and I think there's definitely some influence even from the Doug Aldrich type of era. There's a couple tracks on there that sound like they're more from that, and then there's even something like After All. I don't know if you listened to the record yet. There's an acoustic song in there that really David says this is new territory for putting it on a Whitesnake album, man. We're going to keep fingers crossed that the fans accept it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure but it's always a chance. We take, some people always say like you don't branch out enough, and then you branch out. People are like, oh, they're selling out and they're doing different stuff. So you can't make everybody happy. It's just
that one began initially to go on Unzipped, the acoustic record.
Okay.
David wanted to include some new songs, and just scheduling wise, it just didn't really work out to have some of that stuff go on there. By the time we had Tracked, After All, where I was the guy who he brought that to say, where would you go with it? Maybe from our earlier discussion a minute ago about how David would go about writing. He had the basic idea and said, where would you go? So came up with the chords for the B section and the instrumental section and the intro, etc. And by the time we had it tracked, everybody kind of dug it, the concept of it as an album track. So
cool.
There you go, man. It made the album. But David definitely said, well, this one that's new territory for a Whitesnake electric album.
Well, that's cool though. That's cool. The now going back, well, just your whole career in general. Do you feel this may come across as kind of heavy that you have a muse, or like I hear some musicians say they feel like they're a vessel, and that they just they just put out what flows through them, and some people, feel like they're creating. It's their creativity. They are responsible for what they create, the good and the bad. Do you feel like that one way or the other? Do you feel like you're personally responsible? Or do you feel like, oh no, this is all coming to me from? I just have to be open to the creative ether, or have you?
Well, I think it's both, right?
Okay.
I definitely believe in a higher power and don't see myself as the center of the universe. So I can't.
I didn't mean it that way. No,
I can't accept that anything I'm doing is all from me. Although I do believe people create their own destiny and can use their God-given abilities to the best of their ability.
Sure.
Gosh, that's poorly worded.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
I think you have to try and make the most of what you're given in life, and I think the answer would be both. But it's all those experiences in life, and I think that what you ingest musically is eventually going to come out and manifest itself in the form of your music, right? I mean, that's common sense. Yeah. Just like anything. You listen to somebody speak and you're going to be influenced by their speech patterns. We're all influenced by our parents and the way they spoke and acted. So it's nothing more than simple stuff that I can't, as a musician, it drives me crazy to watch other musicians get so self-important over stuff like that. We're not rocket scientists. We're guys making music, and that's from all of our influences pooled collectively, and also, of course, our work ethic and our ability to drive ourselves to do so.
Right. unless you're Brian May, or then you are a rocket scientist. Or,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Disclaimer: Brian May
Yeah.
is a rocket scientist.
But now when you were going back for your Dying to Live project, for your 13, how did you get the people involved? Like, did you have Vinny Appice and Tony Franklin in mind? And that's part of a two-sided question. Like, when you were writing the music for it, once you had the people in mind, like once you were finishing up songs, like were you writing a melody saying, okay, I've got Russ Allen in mind for this, do I need to write to his strings? Or were you writing what you write and then, hey, you guys are all pros, do what you do on this?
No, I definitely wrote around the personnel.
Okay.
There's definitely like a mission involved there. There has to be. Otherwise, I mean, that album was already too diverse sounding for Frontiers. I mean, they definitely complained about, but I like that. I don't really give a shit in the end. No, sorry to use foul language on your podcast.
Oh, no, doesn't matter.
It drives me nuts. I don't know when it became cool that like you have to put out an album of 12 or 13 songs that all sound the same.
Right.
My favorite stuff is like Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, right? Where there's like all these different styles represented.
Exactly.
And it's just diverse, right? So anyway, the way it came down personnel-wise was I had just done that kind of experimental instrumental EP called VHF with Tony Franklin playing bass. And I said, look, man, I want to make just like a straight-ahead rock album. Nothing crazy, nothing overly creative, not trying to prove anything with progressive stuff. I just want to make a good hard rock record.
Right.
And it's like, that sounds great. And I said, who would you want as a drummer? And he said, Vinny Appice. So that's how the rhythm section came together. And I thought, okay, so now we've got this Dio on steroids kind of thing. And I had just been exposed to Russell Allen. So I said, well, there's the singer. Right. So kind of like almost a no-brainer because you go, boy, this could be really cool. We'd get kind of a Dio-ish influence, but Russ can really sing anything, and I could include my ballads, kind of foreigner-ish kind of stuff. That's the way I describe that record: foreigner-ish at its lightest and Dio-ish at its heaviest. And,
Gotcha.
So Russ had a very busy schedule. Jeff Scott Soto was doing a favor and singing backups on it for me, which was so cool of him because he's overqualified for that. And in the end, it was a couple things. It was Russ's schedule to finish it, and it was also just signing with Frontiers and them wanting a little bit more of like the commercial thing to finish it off. And I thought, man, this is just going to be a project. I should have Jeff sing lead on it too. It'd be great. I'll have two of the best singers in rock today singing on it. And so Jeff did awesome, and then Derek Sherinian. There wasn't a ton of space for him, but he's like one of those guys that just knows how to play exactly what makes the song work.
Yeah,
Derek's got great sounds, great sounds.
He does.
So he was able to just really tie it all together for me, and so I was very grateful to all those guys that they were a part of it. Obviously, like, I didn't intend to do like a super band kind of thing. It just kind of
ended up that way. Yeah, it's a great list of the musicians. And funny thing about Jeff Scott Soto, I interviewed him last year, and going back to when he was in Yngwie's band, he told me he didn't expect to get the gig. He just thought it'd be a chance for him to meet Yngwie.
That's funny.
But the funny how things work out. Now, for the Whitesnake album, when you're writing, you've been in two band projects before, obviously Night Ranger, but how do you and Reb approach gelling your parts, or if one of you has the idea to begin with, like how do you combine parts, or how do you work around each other?
Well, whoever came up with the basic song idea, that was probably served as the foundation rhythm part, right? So then as the secondary rhythm player, you could either just double, or you could also look for overdubs or additional ideas. And we definitely threw a lot of stuff at the wall. I'm very overdub minded. I probably drive Reb a little crazy in that department. He really likes the Aerosmith, just kind of two guitars playing off each other. So that's how that works in terms of rhythms. And then in terms of leads, basically I just let Reb play whatever wherever he wanted to play solos, or he chose to play solos. I don't make it like it was my call, but we're pretty low key about that stuff. Like neither one of us are overly competitive about, hey, I got this many leads on the album. It's basically 50-50 with us. And so I just tell Reb, play wherever you want, and then I'll play the rest of them.
Yeah,
And that's the way that works. And usually if there's harmony stuff, that's a little bit more my forte, working out like the harmony stuff and figuring that stuff out. And slide stuff is usually me, although Reb does a great job of faking it with the bar. He has got a cool thing going on with that. And acoustic usually falls to me. Backup singing falls a lot more to Reb. We just sort of know our strengths. Like Reb's a better singer than I am, so like let him go ahead, and I'm not gonna, hey man, I really want to get in there and sing that. I
just whatever works, right?
Things, but that's about it.
Yeah, and it's not like either one of you have to really prove yourself. You both are on record as being fantastic players, so it's not like you're young upstarts going, I want to get 4 solos to his 3. That's stupid. But is that dynamic any different than it was in Night Ranger? I mean, that was probably way more Brad's band.
I still got to prove myself, man, for sure. There's still a lot of people that don't know who I am or can consider me an unknown, because my career kind of blossomed after the era where you could sell 1 million albums or a couple million albums. So I'm forever fighting that uphill battle of, you're never quite be as popular as the guy who sold millions of albums, and people had your image on cassettes and in your room, or albums, or whatever the format may be. Those guys are always going to be deemed a little bit more of like deities and rock gods, and
it's inevitable.
Consequently, better players. There's definitely an evaluation process in the rock scene where people who aren't players just evaluate kind of based on fame. I'm not saying everybody does that, but there's certainly an element of that. So for me, it's always, I'm always still trying to prove myself. But that being said, I do that within the confines of not being aggressive as a bandmate, because that just makes you a bad bandmate. That's got to come first, right?
That's what I more meant. Yeah, that's
like I want David to think, hey man, this guy's got a great vibe and great agreeable personality, and of course I want Reb to think that guitar wise. I don't want him to think, boy, Joel's really coming after me trying to grab all the guitar work, and that stuff's, it's never worth it in the end. There's so much room to showcase your guitar playing in Whitesnake. There's more than enough room for 2 guitar players to showcase what they can do.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, it's such a guitar heavy band that speaking of that, when you're touring things that maybe aren't as guitar heavy, how different is it when you're on the road with Whitesnake, which is, going out on the road? Is it a vastly different experience than when, of course, you're with Cher and Trans-Siberian Orchestra? I would imagine Trans-Siberian Orchestra is a really elaborate, like, here's your marks, be on this at this portion of the stage during this part, and be here, there. I mean, is it a lot more freeform than something like Whitesnake, or?
Yeah. I mean, you're basically in your spot, and there will be like a few agreed upon spots where we'll cross the stage or interact a little bit. Whitesnake is not, it's for the most part, it's like us in our positions and David roaming the stage more than anything.
Right.
I like to turn around and jam with Tommy from time to time, because he's Tommy Aldridge.
Right.
And like, what guitar player wouldn't want to turn around and go, I'm jamming with Tommy Aldridge right now. This kicks ass. So there's not as much like running around the stage with Whitesnake. TSO is a very wide deck, and so you're correct. You're usually assigned like a section that you're going to be in for each section of a song, and then it's your job to kind of hold those people that have a direct view of you during that time. And we all got to make sure that we get to those spots at some point during the show, so we choreograph it enough that, like, hey, this section has seen me enough that they're not just going to be seeing the same guy the whole show. You don't want to get them bored by like, boy, we've been looking at this same guy here for whatever 80% of the show.
Right. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And then Cher is actually, I mean, I'm in the background on a bandstand for the bulk of the gig, and then I step out one time to hold the audience on my own when she's doing a wardrobe change, and then 2 times with her where we're the only 2 downstage, and it's my job to kind of vibe on whether or not she wants to interact or if I should be going with symmetry. The general principle on a big stage is if somebody's on one side, you go to the other, so one half of the audience isn't totally bored with nothing to look at.
Right.
But when we're crossing, I'll kind of keep an eye out and go like, does she want to go back to back right now? Does she want to interact or sing to me a little bit? You just kind of read what she does, which is never easy because she doesn't do the same thing ever twice. I mean, it's been different every show. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I don't want to become known as the guitar player that knocked over Cher. I always say that. I'm like, God forbid. I mean, can you imagine?
Well, yeah, that would not be. That wouldn't be good.
It wouldn't be the way to get your fame, Like, boy, this guy knocked over this 72-year-old woman, this 72-year-old legendary singer.
That Joel Hoekstra is a class act. Yeah. I mean, how heavy is a Les Paul to the back of the head anyway? I mean, it's couldn't be that bad. But that makes perfect sense as far as like crisscross the stage and cover different aspects, but it probably varies a little bit in every band. Like I would imagine in the 70s, early 80s for like Michael Anthony and Eddie Van Halen, the choreograph was just don't get kicked in the face by Dave.
Probably. Yeah. Any band that I've been a part of, it's certainly when you play the bigger stages, it's not as big of a deal like on a club stage or a more intimate venue. But when you're playing a big stage, you can't leave one half of the arena with nothing to look at. And even from a distance, it makes the stage look better to see somebody kind of covering each area of the stage. So that's, I think, staging 101 in rock and roll that most bands follow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your Atomic Guitar Works, so the purple Whitesnake model, how does that differ from a standard Les Paul? I mean, it's a cool little company. I've looked into them. Is it mostly a visual thing? I mean, obviously it's a good instrument, but I mean, does it have a different neck profile or different sounding pickups or anything? Or
I basically told him to make the neck like my R7 gold top.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty similar in terms of that department. It's a little bit different at the joint. There's a little bit more of an easier access thing happening. Body, I think, is about the same, except for, of course, all the Swarovski crystals on the front. But there's Doug Aldrich pickups in it, so that's different. That wouldn't come with a Gibson. And they like to use hip shot tuners. Those are that's definitely something that's different than Gibson as well. Good sounding instrument, actually. It's surprisingly, it's like obviously was thought of as a visual piece. It's so visual that it's like I almost can't use it during a normal song because it's distracting. Like if I pull it out to play just like in the middle of the set on like "Fool for Your Lovin'" or something like that, half of the audience is like pointing at the guitar. I noticed, so I was like, all right, you know what? I think I'll use that for my guitar solo.
Right.
In the middle of the show when it's just me out there. That way it's just not a distraction from songs or other band members or whatever.
I got you. Going back to your songwriting, say you come up with an idea and you're not near any of your instruments, just out shopping or driving. When you first hear an idea in your head, I'm curious, do you just hear it in your head? Do you assign it a note value or a key, or do you picture a fingering in your mind, or do you basically just hear sort of, itself like just that riff or that idea basically in a vague keyless manner? Does that make sense?
The way things work best for me is to build out from a chorus, right? So like a lot of times if I'm walking around, that's where I'll end up writing with nothing in my hands, because I'll write a chorus in my head. Mm-hmm. up with a hook and sing it, and then I'll usually pull out my cell phone and sing a voice memo or whatever if I have a song idea. And then when I get back to the hotel room, I can come up with a proper progression behind it or riff behind it, and then you've got a chorus, and then from there it's pretty easy to build out. I think you get a verse that somehow is about the chorus, but for me, writing chorus out is the best way to building out from a chorus is the easiest way to write a song.
Sure, that makes sense, because that's going to be basically the hook. I mean, it's most likely, yeah. Any chance of you coming back with, like, you had some pretty experimental and real jazzy playing on Undefined.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you'll ever approach that thing again, or kind of get back into that? I mean, it's just
never say never, man.
Right. I will not ever.
The way things worked out is that I just kind of ride where life takes me. So at that time, my friend TJ Helmrich, who was running the Recording Institute of Technology, most people know GIT, right? The guitar school. Well, he was the head of RIT. He's a great guitar player himself, but he had access to free time. And as it turns out, when I would take my trips to LA, he was playing a show one time with Virgil Donati, the drummer, and Rick Fiorabracci, the bass player. Both amazing guys, and they were like, hey, if you ever have anything you want us to play on, let me know. And I thought, boy, I mean, here I've got this guy who will record them free. I'll get this great drum sound and a live room, and I should do this, right? Yeah. So that's why I took ideas from where I was in life. Like I was playing in an acid jazz band and a residency. Those ideas came from doing that. Those funkier songs that are a little jazzier, because I was playing like that at the time. So it's all where life kind of guides you, and all that stuff that I went through kind of happened because I went to GIT or MI in basically 91, and Smells Like Teen Spirit came out shortly thereafter. So it was like any of that, like you're going to go out to LA from your hometown and become a guitar hero or get discovered and be appreciated for all your chops and all that stuff. That just went, those things that crashed. And so I was like, all right, how do I make myself valuable? Well, I just play guitar, man, learn all styles, do every gig, do all the things that can make you valuable to bands beyond chops, right?
Right.
Sing background vocals, be the guy that's on time all the time, be the guy that's polite. And so all of those skill sets kind of came full circle. All of a sudden the 80s resurgence thing happened kind of in the early 2000s. Right. And that's when I ended up joining Night Ranger, was the very beginning of 2008. And so it's just riding the wave of where life takes me musically, and then just trying to do the best I can with those situations. So right now, obviously, commercially it would make zero sense for me to do that. And I can't say necessarily with any of it that I'd say, well, that's where my heart is. Like my heart is probably the most in rock. That's what I began with, was hard rock. That's what made me want to start playing guitar. So I guess I view like I'm where I belong, but I love all styles, and I'd like to be able to release some more stuff like that, or even just different stuff. I don't want to be locked in.
Yeah,
I'd love to become like the poor man's Tommy Emmanuel later in my life, and just play like acoustic guitar on the porch 8 hours a day, and just release really great acoustic guitar playing too. There's a lot of me that wants to do that.
Well, the good thing is nowadays you could even just, if you came up with a cool song that was outside of that, and you could just release a song, and you don't have to put months into an album, and just release it on your site or whatever. But that's true for me too. I love all music, and you can find anything in my collection. I mean, just all over the map. But hard rock will always be like my home base. That's what I end up reverting to. That's my default, I guess, setting.
Pretty much where I'm at, man. But I think, especially growing up in Chicago, it wasn't just the it wasn't just me. That was kind of like what was considered a good guitar player in Chicago, was somebody who could play all styles,
Okay.
like be able to do sessions in all styles or gigs in all styles. Because there's a lot of people playing blues gigs or country gigs or singer-songwriter gigs, and being able to cut all of that stuff and not just be a shredder, which.
Right.
Obviously I started out going after all that as a kid. Like I was learning 8-finger technique when I was 14 years old from TJ Helmrich, who was one of my first teachers. So all that was more or less a product of what the guitar scene was like when I was a kid.
Right.
And now having it come full circle.
I think you and I are actually only about a year apart. So yeah, we came up through the same high school in the 80s, and that was all I think we had the same musical atmosphere. Well, I want to cover, basically just let you go over when's Whitesnake hitting the road, what's the best place for everybody to check out, obviously whitesnake.com, that kind of thing, but your site, where should your fans get a hold of you and keep up to date with all your stuff?
Yeah, the way things are working, I'll run through the whole schedule. I'm in Las Vegas right now doing a residency with Cher. Mm-hmm. I go straight from here to Whitesnake rehearsals that start April 1st. The Whitesnake U.S. tour starts April 12 through May 18. May 20, I fly to Canada to join back up with the Cher tour that I'm subbed out of. People are going to see a Cher U.S. arena tour happening in April and May. I'm subbed out to do Whitesnake.
Gotcha.
But I'm going to be able to do the Canadian run. So I do that through May 30. Then I'm home for about 10 days. Then I go to do the European tour with Whitesnake, which I think is June 12 through July 18. And then I'm home for a little break in there. And August, I think 17, I fly back out here to Vegas and do another residency with Cher. And from there, I can't really announce too much. I know that the Whitesnake Rock in Rio gig has been announced in September, so that's confirmed. So that should give everybody kind of an idea of what's happening, but I'm not really ready to discuss the rest. But there you go. And there's going to be some semblance of Whitesnake, Cher, and TSO through the rest of the year. But I'm basically booked through the entire year, which is kind of craziness.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And people can follow it all at joelhoekstra.com. I'll spell my name because it's the worst rock name in the world. Joel, Joel, Hoekstra, HOEKSTRA.com, joelhoekstra.com. You can go there and check everything out. David calls that my Encyclopedia Britannica. There's like everything on my entire career on there.
That's great. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time out, and I want to definitely keep abreast of everything you got going on. I've always been a huge Whitesnake fan, and so it's all good for me. I need to check out some of those reissues. I've been remiss. I've not jumped on the Slide It In, or I didn't even get the 87 deluxe package, which I know I need to check into. That's when I got into them, was basically the Sykes period, which, I've gone back and had the other stuff. I think
that was basically everybody in the U.S., I feel like.
Well,
that's just the way it was.
I had Slide It In.
The UK fans hate us for that, but that's the way it worked in the U.S. They weren't on the radio and weren't exposed to us until Slide It In.
Right.
I remember hearing like Slow and Easy and Slide It In and going, wow, these guys are cool.
Right.
And then, of course, the 87 record got released and just blew up like nobody's business. And then, of course, we all wanted Slip of the Tongue because we all loved the 87 record, right? And then it just kind of fell off the map for us all, right? But that is a pretty typical story, I think, of most of the Whitesnake U.S. fans.
Of course. 90 to 93, I lived I was stationed in Germany. I was in the Army, so I went down to some local store and was trying to get up a little music collection to have overseas, and I picked up Slide It In. And of course, immediately realized that Sykes wasn't on it. And you always knew that you could tell he was just overdubbing and filling in parts. But the European release obviously just had Marsden and Moody, so it was the same record. It's just without the every 30 seconds.
Well put, man. Well put.
I mean, am I not correct? That's
yeah. No, absolutely.
But cool. Well, thanks again, and we'll be sure to stay in touch, and I'll hope to see you guys out on the road soon.
Cool. Sounds good, bro. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thanks, Joel.
send me over the links and I'll get it all up, okay?
You got it. Appreciate it, bud.
Cool. All right, brother. See you.
See ya.